Okay, I'm gonna hopefully do better and be more articulate than I was last time. Um, and the other thing I was thinking too is when I describe MS, I can kind of read from what I said in my TED talk because it makes a little bit more sense and it's a little more concise. So let me just pull it up. All right. I am ready when you are. Good. Okay. Multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disease that attacks your brain and your spinal cord. And normally your immune system would function to keep you alive, but in autoimmune disease, it turns on you, and the results are disastrous. And for reasons that nobody really understands, in MS, the immune system goes haywire and it attacks your central nervous system. And since nerves link your brain and your spinal cord to your entire body and allow them to communicate back and forth, damaging nerves can cause a huge variety of problems, which can range from difficulty with walking and moving your muscles to issues with thinking and cognition. And it looks very different in each person.
Or
You're breaking up a little bit. I can't hear you.
okay. So now, can you just can you describe what you were doing before you were diagnosed?
Sure. Right before I was diagnosed, I was enrolled in the CRNA program at Rutgers. So I was in graduate school to become a nurse anesthetist, which is someone who gives anesthesia in the operating room. It's a really competitive graduate program that only accepts about 20 people per year, and I had worked as an intensive care nurse in Georgetown, and neurosurgery was my specialty, trying to earn my spot. So I was studying really hard, and I was about a year into the program, and it was my very first day in the operating room when everything kind of came on, and I ended up being taken to the ER and ultimately diagnosed with MS.
So now, describe what happened to you. What was that day?
Yeah. So leading up to the day that I was taken to the emergency room, I knew something wasn't quite right. I have been really athletic. I did CrossFit and was always either at the gym or studying. Pretty much that was my life. And I noticed one day while I was working out, my foot fell asleep, which was strange because I was actually running at the time. And it never woke back up. And then over the next couple of weeks, the numbness that started on my foot slowly spread up both of my legs. And I knew obviously that it wasn't right, but I kind of didn't want to know what was wrong. I hoped it was a sports injury, it was no big deal, that it would just kind of go away on its own. Um, and then that very first day in the operating room at UMDNJ, I went to put on my surgical scrubs and I was tying the drawstring of my pants and I realized that I had no feeling from the waist down. And my right arm had kind of also gone completely numb. And I was trying to do simple things like push buttons and draw up medications into a syringe. And I realized I couldn't even control the muscles of my right hand very well. Um, and then I began to kind of, reality set in a little bit, like this obviously isn't normal. But it was a really important day. So I knew I couldn't call out sick or go home. So I tried to push through it. And then when I was in the operating room, my vision kind of went blurry. I couldn't really see anything very well. So I finally made my way back to the locker room and I kind of swallowed my pride and I called my teacher and I said, I think there's something wrong. I think I need to go to the emergency room. And keep in mind, it was, 2 floors below me. But I had let myself get to the point where I was so bad that I couldn't even get to the elevator on my own. So she actually had to come get me, and she took me down to the emergency room. And this whole time, I'm still thinking that it's a sports injury and that they're just going to tell me to take an Advil and go home and suck it up. But much to my surprise, they actually admitted me, and I stayed in the hospital for the next week while they were running a bunch of tests.
So, diagnosed with type 4 and like after that, what was that after your
Oh, everything. Everything was going through my head all at the same time. Denial, anger. Most of all, I was telling myself over and over again, this is nothing. You just hurt yourself. You pinched a nerve. This is a vast overreaction on everyone else's part. I was pretty sure that they were going to send me home and say, you really overblown this situation. So I think once it was no longer deniable and that, they finally convinced me that there really was something serious going on, I was obviously scared. And every single day, hour by hour, the situation was changing. I had people coming in throwing really scary diagnoses at me, things that were irreversible and uncurable, and things that were going to alter the course of my life. And it was obviously pretty terrifying. So when they finally pinpointed what it was, that was almost a relief because I'm a very type A person. I always had the plan all laid out for myself. And to all of a sudden have everything just thrown up in the air and everything be a giant question mark was not something that I was comfortable with. So even though the news wasn't great, obviously, there's no cure for MS. There are treatments, but they're not always effective and they come with a lot of side effects. It's not an ideal situation by any means, but to me it was a relief to have a name for it because then I could go from there and form my plan of attack. So
So,
a little bit, but I can understand you. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Uh, Leading up to my diagnosis, I had everything planned out. I think since the age of 3, when every Halloween I put on a white coat and a stethoscope, and I would carry around my little doctor bag. I always knew that I wanted to go into medicine, and I worked really hard in high school. I got really good grades. I got into a good college. I did everything right, and I ended up exactly where I had planned to end up. I, out of college, worked in the neurosurgical ICU, a very competitive work environment, with the end goal of making it into this graduate program, which I did. And, everything was going according to plan. I worked really, really hard for it, obviously, but it was all falling into place. So my long-term plan, I was going to be uh, delivering anesthesia in the operating room. It was, what I really wanted to do with my life. It was very technical work, and I loved the procedures that I got to do and treating my patients. And I was a 4.0 student. I was a great student, and so my life kind of always had this forward momentum. And I had, everybody gets their fair share of challenges, but nothing ever really threw me off of my path up until that point. And it really was like hitting a brick wall face on. And I'm not the type of person to just give up and throw my hands in the air and say, oh, well, that was a good run that we had. I worked really, really hard for everything that I had accomplished. And I wasn't going to throw it all away because of one hiccup. And the doctor that diagnosed me with MS actually sat me down and said, this isn't realistic. You need to rethink your whole life plan. Um, your career goals aren't going to happen. You have very advanced disease in your spinal cord. You're going to end up in a wheelchair. You can't do this career. Pick something else. Like scale it down. You don't have to always be the best at everything, and you don't have to do this. I'm sure there's something else that you can choose that you'll do okay and be happy. And I kind of didn't accept that. I thought that was terrible advice. So I kept going. I didn't take a break from school. I didn't stop for the semester even. I kept going. I finished the semester. Um, and the only reason I chose to go in a different direction was because throughout the few times that I was hospitalized within that few months, I encountered some awesome students and some awesome nurse practitioners, and I realized that I could have a big impact on the community if I could treat patients, but also know what it was that they were going through. You know, just thinking about it made me excited and gave me an even better sense of purpose than I already had. So I did ultimately end up choosing directions, and I kind of look back at that point of my life, and I see myself as really hitting that brick wall and falling back and stumbling and kind of going, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to turn to the left and run in that direction instead. So it was a very conscious decision, and I battled through it, and I debated heavily what to do. And one of my aha moments was I was 25 years old at the time, and MS does not shorten your life expectancy. It can take away some of the quality of your life, but it really doesn't take away any years. And I realized that being 25, I was going to, in all likelihood, be living with this for more years than I ever knew what it was like to live without it. And it was really up to me at that point to set the tone and decide what the rest of my life was going to look like. I wasn't going to let anybody else tell me. Oh yeah, yeah, I remember. I remember that. So I used to love the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I would have probably bored you to death for like a half an hour and telling you all my grand plans for life. Now I hate that question. I don't picture myself in 5 years. I take everything day by day, week by week, month by month. And not because I think something bad's going to happen or I'm being pessimistic. I've just realized that life is a pretty big adventure and you have to kind of go with the flow, which is a big epiphany for me. Um, if you had told me 4 years ago that this was what I would be doing with my life right now, I would have never believed you, thought you were crazy. And then I just look back at the last 4 years and everything that I've accomplished in the wake of what could have been something that really halted my life. I would have never believed you. So it's kind of put that into perspective for me that you should know what you're doing in 5 years. Nobody really knows where they're gonna be in 5, 10, 15 years. And that's okay. And just roll with whatever life hands you and make the best of it and let yourself thrive through all of the ups and all of the downs in life and go with the flow. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, I could go on. um, so when I was diagnosed, I was still 25. So thanks to the new healthcare laws, I was still under my parents' insurance, but that only lasted for a year. And because I was a full-time grad student still, I had to choose whether to do Cobra onto my parents' plan, which was $750 a month, or take the school's insurance, which was not that good. Sorry, Rutgers. And my medicine costs, just the one medicine that I take for the MS, costs $11,000 a month, and the copay on that is 20% through Rutgers. So it would have been thousands of dollars a month just for the one medicine. Never mind the MRIs that I have to do. My copay would have been like $800, and I was getting those every few months. The other medicines I take to control the symptoms, the doctor's appointments, the blood tests. It's crazy the amount of money that it costs to go through something like this. So it ended up being more economical to pay $750 a month for my insurance and have better coverage than it would have been to take the school insurance. So that was a bit of a strain for the remainder of my time in school, for sure. There are patient assistant programs that I enrolled in, and I'm still battling some of my bills from a year ago. But it definitely is a huge burden and a huge factor. And I feel bad because my husband and I just got married in May, and we're looking to buy a house and buy a car. You know, it's an exciting time in our life, but I also have to factor the fact that I have MS into our budget and into our family planning, and it cuts into your bottom line significantly. The Affordable Care Act, from the perspective of my patients who I care for every day, has been a real game changer. I've had people who were not insured, couldn't even afford to come to a neurologist because they could never afford a specialist, much less the medications. All of a sudden, now they're getting to see a neurologist for the first time. I just had a patient today, in fact, who was diagnosed 10 years ago, but didn't have insurance at the time. So he only had one MRI when he was diagnosed in the hospital and has never had an MRI ever since. And thanks to the Affordable Care Act, he has insurance for the first time. So the first time he's seen a specialist who deals with MS daily, the first time he's been on medication, the first time I've been able to order labs and he can go to a lab and get it done. So it's really nice for them. It's not perfect yet, but it's a huge step in the right direction for sure. I mean, people my age never feel like they need healthcare insurance, and then something like this happens and you realize it's a really nice thing to have. Can you?
Yeah.
Sure. Um, so relapses in multiple sclerosis are anytime that the body is attacking a new area of either your brain or your spinal cord. So the tricky part about it is you never know where it's going to choose to crop up and where it's going to choose to attack. So I've had 4 relapses in the last few years, and each one has been very different. So my first one was my initial episode where I couldn't feel my legs or my arm, and my vision was compromised. My second relapse, I was in so much pain. My legs felt like they had been dipped in like an ice bath and then electrocuted. And I couldn't even walk because to put any pressure on my feet just shot horrible nerve pain up through my entire body. So I couldn't move for weeks. I had to get IV steroids on my couch because I couldn't even leave the house. My third relapse, I woke up one morning and I couldn't flex the muscles in my right leg. So I knew something was going on. And then over the course of the next few days, I could no longer pick my foot up and I could no longer walk. And that's the first time that I actually ended up having to use a cane and be in a wheelchair. And then I just had another one last month where all my vision became like double and I was seeing two of everything and it was blurry and I couldn't read the computer screen at work. That was my first symptom. And then the next day, half of my face went numb, and I couldn't use my right hand. Then I had to learn how to write with my left hand for a while, for a couple of weeks. So it's always a little bit different. For me, most of my relapses involve muscles and motor stuff. So usually I have trouble moving or walking. For a lot of people, relapses are more fatigue and cognitive issues. People have trouble remembering, speaking. It can really vary from person to person. Okay. I get where you're going. Um, um, I I don't want to put it in an insensitive way because sometimes when you say it's a good thing, that can grate people in the wrong way. Um, I hesitate to say that MS has been a good thing for me. I recognize that having to go through the pain and the strain that it's put on me and my family is unfortunate. You know, I would have rather not had to do it, but the silver lining in everything is that I have more purpose in my life than I ever have before. It's made me certainly a better nurse, a great nurse practitioner. It's made me a better person. It's made me a more kind, compassionate, grateful human being for sure. It's definitely put my life into perspective and really shown me what's important. And maybe it's not all about getting A's, and maybe there's more to life. um, I have met some of the most incredible people throughout my journey that I cannot believe that I've had the privilege to meet. Um, and so while it might not be a great thing, a lot of great things have come from it. Yeah. I think the best advice that I have for young people who are going through a similar situation is to not give up, to let yourself have a bad day, and it's okay to feel sad and angry, and it's okay to be discouraged for a while, but you are young and you still do have your youth and your health for the most part. You know, you might be going something through something right now, but you're still a young vibrant person, and you can still be a young vibrant person despite your MS or whatever is going on with you in your life. It's not a reason to give up on your dreams and to give up on yourself. And if anything, it's a time to just dig deep and really discover who you are and discover what you're really made of. I don't think I can honestly say that I was 100% comfortable in my own skin, or I knew exactly who I was before this, but I can honestly say with 100% certainty, I know myself. I am 100% certain of who I am as a person, what I'm capable of doing, and I've even learned what I'm not capable of doing, which is an important lesson to learn, all because of going through this. And that's a pretty big gift if you look at it that way. And just keep doing whatever makes you happy. You know, the things that made you happy before are still the same things that make you happy now. Um, so just take the time to go through the process and to cope with it in your own way, but realize that there's a light at the end of the tunnel and you're going to be okay, and you're going to get back to the person that you once were, if not be a little better because of it. I've always been an old soul. Uh, I think it forces you to shift your perspective. When you're in school, everything's about the future. You know, you get through life one test at a time, one paper at a time. You know, you're only really skipping from class to class and worried about the task in front of you, with the goal of doing it all for the long-term payoff, the great job or the fancy car, or the big house, or the happy family that you're going to get as a result. Having something come and shake up your world right in the middle of that time of your life really focuses you back in on what's important and brings you to the present. So I think that was my biggest shift in perspective. I think when you're in school, everything is focusing on going forward, and it forces you to stop and take a look at yourself and really focus on you, and everything else kind of comes second. Does that answer the question? I don't know. Yeah, I'll read it off of my computer screen. You just need. Do you want me to like introduce it, or do you want me to just read it? Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to be like reading it off the computer. So is it okay if I'm not like making eye contact? Yeah. Okay. Um, so the background story. So I had recently been through a relapse and was kind of on the road to recovery, and it was a really kind of up and down roller coaster time for me. And the first day that I really felt healthy again, recovering from that, I kind of looked back at what a low I had just gone through in my previous relapse, and I realized um, how discouraged I had been and how far I'd come in such a short period of time. So as I was spending the weekend hiking with a bunch of friends, and I was walking and climbing over rocks and doing things that I would never have been able to do just a few short weeks ago, I realized that it would be kind of nice to have a little extra word of encouragement for the next time that it happened, because there is going to be a next time. Um, and so once I started feeling better, I decided to sit down and write myself a letter that I could actually go back and read on a day that I wasn't feeling good, because I knew it was inevitable, and it's inevitable for everybody. Everybody has good days followed by bad days. That's just life. So I kind of thought, who better to give myself that who better to give myself that encouragement than me, because I may be able to ignore everybody else's advice, but I shouldn't ignore myself. I could be stubborn that way. Um, so maybe you're a caregiver, or you struggle with your own health issues, or maybe you're just chasing a dream, and it's going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of long hours to achieve it. Um, but who better to give yourself a little pep talk than you? So I wanted to share the letter that I wrote for me with you, and hope that it inspires you to do something similar. So it's aptly named "A Letter to Myself on a Bad Day." I'm just going to move it up. Today was a great day. You probably don't remember it, because hopefully you're reading this letter in the very, very distant future. But allow me to paint you a picture. You woke up early, well rested, and didn't even have to hit the snooze button. Outside the window, the morning sun was burning red and lighting up the New York City skyline in that awe-inspiring way it does on clear mornings. You took in the view through the steam of a hot cup of coffee without having any reason to rush out the door. Afterwards, you ran errands effortlessly and even had the energy to spare for the gym. And obviously, as with every great day, there were plenty of reasons to smile and laugh. You laughed with friends and family. You laughed at random things on TV and on the radio as you drove around town with the windows down. Then you came home, you cooked a big, delicious dinner, and ate it with the love of your life. And perhaps it wouldn't seem like much in the eyes of others, but I assure you that it was an extraordinarily ordinary day. It's only been a few months since your last relapse, and you bounced back, as you always have. This didn't come easy. You had to work very hard and have a lot of patience with yourself and with your body. All that hard work is showing now. You've been away from the gym for a couple months and your body feels a little soft and squishy, and I know you hate that because it makes you feel weak and sickly. But the good news is that you're back at it now and you're feeling stronger by the day. And today you aren't having any trouble walking around and your brain is fog free. You're even able to get back to hiking and biking and swimming if you want to. But here's the bad news. I need you to pull yourself up and to do it all again. And I know that the whole process of recovering from a relapse can seem like you're staring up at the vertical face of a mountain and being told to climb without a harness. And you're right. It is difficult, and it is a lot to ask. But trust me, you can do it. And I know you're having a tough day, and it's hard to see the payoff. This is a frustrating disease that can give you highs one day and send you crashing on the rocks the next. For me right now, it's a good day. But for you, it's a crashing on the rocks kind of a day. And trust me, the days that I'm having right now make all the hard work that you're about to do worthwhile. I know that the silly everyday things like exercising and socializing with your friends and aimlessly browsing the aisles of Target are what you fear losing the most. But you won't. You're not defeated, and if you stick with it, you'll have a good day again soon. And here's the best kept MS secret. The bad days, like the one you're having right now, take the kind of day that I'm having, from good to extraordinary. You were so happy today. And trust me when I say that you'll be happy like that again soon. But you have to fight for it. And I know that you're worried that this is the relapse that you won't be able to recover from. And that's totally valid. The only words of advice that I could possibly offer would be to relax and wait and see what happens. Trust in your medical team and in your medicine. Rest, even if you don't want to. Catch up on some TV shows and some movies, read a book, call and chat with a friend. And then, when you feel like you're ready to, start rebuilding, brick by brick. You know the routine. The cold, hard truth is that this is not the first time or the last time that you will be required to go to battle with your MS. And for now, there's nothing that you can do to change that. But you can control how you handle the tough times. And you've done an excellent job so far. You and I both know that it's going to take a whole lot more to knock you down completely. You are not in this alone. You have an army at your back. Your family, your friends, your fellow MSers, your medical team, they're all in the fight with you. Take this as a learning experience. Use it to connect with others, to teach, to raise awareness. Great empowerment can come from times of weakness. The most successful people in life usually have overcome some great adversity, and you too must withstand your own trials. Once you overcome today, then you'll officially be a success in my eyes, so congratulations in advance. Also, never forget that I love you, and you'll be okay again. It may take a day, a week, even a few months, but you will find your way back. And if and when the day comes that you don't fully bounce back, then I know that you'll never stop finding a reason to laugh. Like the time that you hosted an ice cream social from your hospital bed, or the time that you insisted on wearing a top hat when you had to use a cane for the first time. Even though those were bad situations, they're still among some of your favorite memories, because they brought out the best in the people that you love the most, and in yourself. It's the little things that make the biggest difference on days like the one you're having right now. Find a little thing to be grateful for. And as my final words of encouragement, I'm going to paraphrase the great E.B. White. Sailors have an expression about the weather. They say, the weather is a great bluffer. Things can look dark. Then a break shows in the clouds, and all is changed. Sometimes rather suddenly. Hang on to your hat, hang on to your hope, and wind the clock, for tomorrow is another day. Yours truly, Stephanie. That's it. Uh, no, because I typed it. I could write one for you. Mhm. That's a good question. Um, oh God, I can hear myself talking. Turn it down a little bit. Uh, can I hear? Is that better? Yeah, it's better. Okay. I can't talk when I can hear myself. It's that. So in my TED talk, I say that when life hands you something unexpected, you have a few choices. You can either deny, cope, or thrive. And if you listen closely to my talk, I did all three. First, I denied my diagnosis and that anything was going on. And then I tried to just cope with it, meaning that I tried to not let it change my life. I tried to keep going in the anesthesia program and act like, oh, this was just something that I could pay attention and continue on, which is what coping is, right? And then ultimately, I kind of let go and I let myself thrive from it, and I let it take me in this whole new direction to where I am today. So I think that's kind of what I mean by whether you're going to choose to cope with something or if you're going to choose to thrive. There's nothing wrong with any of the options. I'm just simply laying them out there.
Yeah, let's talk about like you talk about
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I always say that it's much harder for my family than it is for me. They have the short end of the stick for sure. I have the benefit of living with it every day, so I'm kind of desensitized to it. You know, if I wake up and I can't move my foot so well, then I just kind of press on and go, oh, well, it's just another day. I think it's more shocking to my family when they see me on a bad day because to them I look like night and day change. Like one day she could be looking fantastic, and then next day we can't get her walking. And I think it's much more shocking to them than it is to me because in my own mind, I'm just kind of like, oh, well, that's the day I'm having. So what else are we going to do? What's on TV? It's kind of become just a part of my life, but I still think for them it's a little bit more difficult to watch from the outside and to deal with. My mom especially, because mothers, it's hard, especially when your kids now, you know, almost 30, and you want to be there and tell them it's going to be okay. I go once a month to get my medicine. I go to like a chemotherapy center, and it's an IV infusion, and I stopped letting her come with me because like it's really okay. I got it. I have work to do. Like I need to sit there with my laptop and be productive for a couple hours. Whereas she would really like to just be mother henning and watching over me and making sure that everything's okay. Um, so I think it's definitely harder for them, and I try to shelter them from it, where I don't tell them what's going on until it's really obvious and it can't be denied, because it hurts me to see their face when they realize something's going on. That almost makes it twice as hard. I know I'm perfectly capable of dealing with it, and if I could just internalize it all and take it, I would. But then they get mad at me for not telling them. So I've learned my lesson there. But that's really, I think, the hardest part is the guilt that comes from inflicting that on your family. And if I could take that away, that's the my biggest regret about this is the impact it's had on them. Um, and it does. It comes with it brings a lot of guilt in with a diagnosis for all involved because I feel bad for putting them through it, even though I know it's not my fault technically, but it is and it isn't. I'm still the one that's causing it. Um, but I know I can take it. It's just unfair that it has to bring them down too, unfortunately. That like label you as disabled. Oh, it's such a double-edged sword because we are, right? Technically. Um, I think there's so much stigma revolved around disability, and it goes both ways. People think we're less capable of doing something. I certainly worry about it looking for a job, for instance. I didn't know, is this something I talk about? Is it something I don't talk about? A lot of people struggle with whether to disclose it to their employers and their coworkers because they don't want to be looked at as being inferior or less capable. But on the flip side, it's a little bit difficult to live with something like MS where, nobody would really look at me unless I was having a really rough day and say, oh, there's something wrong with you. Um, which can be a blessing and a curse because I can hide from it and kind of keep it from people if I want to. But if I do something like use a wheelchair at Disney World or use a handicap placard because my leg, I know that I'm not going to be able to walk across the parking lot and get through the entire grocery store and make it back to my car. So if I use a handicap placard to park closer to the front door, you would not believe the harassment that you can get because you don't look like you need it. And it's amazing how fast people will just come up to you and just tell you what they think of you. I think unfortunately it goes both ways, and I wish we could just be a more compassionate society. Because there are certainly times when you want to just shake people and say it doesn't mean I can't do something, and then there are also times that you want to shake people and be like, I can't do this because I am. So it's a little bit of both, actually, which is a bit surprising, but certainly the only way to combat it is to sit down and try to educate people and just share your story. That's really the only thing you can do is just share your story, hope that you can change one person's perspective, and then hope they go home and tell your story to three of their friends and watch a TED talk and get the word out there that it's keep an open mind about it because unfortunately people when they hear disability they think wheelchair, they think um, so disability, can't work, taking government money, sitting at home on the couch. It's unfortunate, but um, that's the world and the society we live in. What was the last part? I got educate people about the Z's. My elevator speech. Yeah, that's what we call it. We develop our elevator speech, our like 2 minute soundbite. No, usually I'm too mad. Uh, I do try to educate people as much as possible. If I run into a situation where, for instance, we just moved and it's always a process, you're trying to make new friends and I was having a day where I had plans with a bunch of new friends and I had to cancel because I just wasn't up for going out. And I got a lot of pushback, and they were like, "Oh, don't be like a flake. How, you committed, come out, yay, we're going drinking." And I had to be like, "No, seriously, I can't do it." They were all going out to like this festival outside, and there was going to be a lot of drinking and a lot of walking. There wasn't going to be any place to sit down, and I just knew that it wasn't going to. And it was the middle of the summer, so it was really hot outside, and heat kind of sets off MS a lot. So I just knew that I could have gone and I could have pushed myself, but I knew that if I did, I was going to have 3 days of not being able to get out of bed as a result. So I have to be like a mature human being and say it's not the best choice for me. I really appreciate the invite. I hope you guys have a lot of fun, but I'm just going to stay home and hang back. The old me would have made some excuse like, "Oh, my grandmother's in the hospital, I have to go," and but now I've learned to be okay with just saying to people like this, that's just not in the cards for me today because of my MS. And people give you a lot of trouble when they don't understand. um, so what I ended up doing was they gave me a lot of trouble about it, and the next time it happened I just showed up in my full-fledged bad dayness. I showed up with my hair like all a mess and my glasses on and in my sweatpants, and I like drug myself onto their couch and I was like, "Listen, when I am having a bad day, this is what I mean. I'm not just being whiny. um, uh, and what I need from you is to either understand when I say that, or say, okay, well, let's go to a movie instead, or to be okay with changing the plans. Because I'd love to, even if I'm not feeling great physically, I'd love to still hang out with you guys and spend time with you. But um, if you were, if you would have said, I'm going to come over to your house and bring a movie and some popcorn, that would have made my day. So I think it does take some education. Some people have to just see it for their own for their own eyes. I think the best thing that my friends ever did for me was it was our college homecoming, and we all had all these plans to tailgate, and the ambulance company that I used to ride with had just gotten a new ambulance, and they were throwing a big party, and it was going to be like all of our best friends, and it was a huge weekend, and I had that relapse where I was having pain, couldn't get off the couch, and I was getting IV medication in my living room. And so I clearly couldn't make homecoming. And I was so disappointed. I was so crushed. And our six best guy friends from the ambulance company ditched the weekend, drove up to our apartment with a six pack and brought the party to us. And we had homecoming in my apartment. So that was awesome. That was the best thing that anybody could have possibly done. Oh, you froze. What? Yeah, no, so I was an EMT. I've been so many times that we like party together on the weekend. No, no, I've never been a patient in an ambulance. No, that's how my husband and I met. We were EMTs in the same ambulance company, and so all of our best friends are all of our EMT buddies and firemen, and that's kind of like that was our social circle in college. Ugh, no, I've talked about myself for way too long. So, what's your project? How's it coming? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, no. No, I'm not. I'm sorry. You did nothing. It's just all right. Yeah. Oh, no. It was a good practice run because I feel like I was so discombobulated that day. Oh, yeah. Looking forward. Looking forward to it. Thank you. Good night. Bye.